Good afternoon and welcome to World News, coming to you live from Warsaw. I'm Salia Strzemska. Poland's Minister of Digital Affairs has warned about an outbreak of fake news in the English language information sphere. The disinformation has to do with the upcoming Polish presidential election.
Over the last few days, we've observed a disinformation campaign in English language media regarding the upcoming Polish presidential election. This message concerns possible disruptions to the electoral process. Its authors are impersonating CNN. NASK's Disinformation Analysis Center is monitoring the case and reporting fake posts. I appeal to everyone to carefully verify sources of information, not to share news from unverified sources, and to use our website to report disinformation.
European countries pledged €21 billion in aid to Ukraine during a meeting in Brussels. Members of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group affirmed their support despite the uncertainty surrounding future US involvement. At the April 11th Ramstein format summit in Brussels, NATO allies pledged a record $23.8 billion in military aid to Ukraine. It was the first time since the inception of the Ukraine Defense Contact Group that it was not hosted by an American Defense Secretary. UK Defense Secretary John Healey led the meeting this year. He called 2025 a critical year in the war and urged defense sectors and governments to step up. The UK alone pledged $5.8 billion, while Germany committed $14.4 billion through 2029. Lithuania, the Netherlands and others also announced significant support. The pledges come amid escalating Russian attacks and growing uncertainty over continued US aid under President Trump's administration. President Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff has arrived in Russia, and now he's reportedly meeting with Vladimir Putin as we speak. Local media report that Witkoff is in St. Petersburg for talks with the head of the Russian Direct Investment Fund, Kirill Dmitriev. Axios writes that after the high-level meetings in Russia, Witkoff will fly to Oman, where the direct US-Iran discussions are scheduled for Saturday. The meeting between the US envoy and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi is aimed at reaching a deal over Tehran's nuclear program. Since returning to office in January, President Trump has repeatedly threatened Iran with military action if it does not agree to a deal. Ksenia Karelina, a Russian-American woman who was freed in a prisoner exchange, has arrived in the United States. Prior to her release, she had been sentenced to 12 years in prison for donating to a Ukrainian charity.
Prior to her release, she'd been sentenced to 12 years in a Russian prison for donating to a Ukrainian charity. Ksenia Karelina is a dual citizen whom a Russian court found guilty last year of treason for donating just over $50 to a US-based charity providing humanitarian support to Kyiv. The 34-year-old ballerina was returned to Joint Base Andrews in Maryland, where she was met by her loved ones. Karelina was exchanged for a dual German-Russian citizen, Arthur Petrov, whom the US authorities accused of masterminding a global smuggling ring to harvest sensitive electronics for Russia's military. The exchange took place at an airport in Abu Dhabi after US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff raised her case with Vladimir Putin during a call last week.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced a new sanctions package targeting Russia's shadow fleet. His statement coincides with a proposed bipartisan US law also targeting Moscow's fleet.
I have also instructed lawmakers to draft new Ukrainian sanctions packages. Our security services have provided appropriate justification. These will be strong sanctions targeting the shadow tanker fleet Moscow uses to finance the war, targeting war propagandists who try to weaken our defense and support Russia, and also targeting some officials, names well known to all Ukrainians who once held influence. Preparations for relevant bills are ongoing, and everything will be rolled out step by step. We are also working to synchronize these Ukrainian sanctions packages with the decisions of our partners, especially in the European Union and other key jurisdictions around the world.
The EU's trade chief, Maroš Šefčovič, has been engaging in a diplomatic charm campaign to strengthen ties with both Beijing and Washington. This effort arises amid the tumultuous trade war initiated by US President Donald Trump. Our correspondent in Brussels, Angela Skujins, has more.
The EU Commissioner for Trade, Maros Šefčovič, has been busy trying to curry favour with both the US and China. The most recent announcement that we've heard from the European Commission is that top EU official will travel to Washington on Monday. The overall aim is to put an end to this transatlantic trade war, which currently stands at a 90-day halt. Let's take a listen to what that European Commission spokesperson had to say regarding this upcoming visit.
The European Union is willing to find win-win outcomes, mutually beneficial deals with our American counterparts to avoid tariffs and to avoid any harmful escalation that would be damaging on both sides of the Atlantic and indeed to the global economy.
But in a twist of events, we've also heard news from the European Commission that Šefčovič has spoken to his Chinese counterparts as early as Tuesday. According to a readout of that talk, those leaders discussed lowering barriers for entries for businesses in both countries. But the dialogue will be laid bare at an upcoming EU-China summit scheduled for the second half of July in that Asian country. So we'll have to wait and see which country Brussels manages to close this transatlantic trade deal with. Angela Skujins from Brussels for TVP World.
The price of gold has reached record highs on Friday morning as a weak US dollar and the intensifying global trade war prompted investors to seek financial safe havens. Gold bullion hit an all-time peak of $3,219 an ounce in early trading and has gained around 5% this week. On Friday, Beijing announced an increase to tariffs on American imports to 125%, hitting back against US President Donald Trump's decision to raise duties on Chinese goods to 145%. The hike comes after the Trump administration kept the pressure on the world's second-largest economy by singling it out for an additional tariff increase, having paused most of the reciprocal duties imposed on dozens of other countries. Romanian Prime Minister Mircea Ciolacu has called on Victor Ponta, a former Prime Minister and now a candidate in the upcoming presidential elections, to withdraw from the race. This follows Ponta's admission of having ordered the controlled flooding of several Romanian villages to save Belgrade, Serbia's capital, from being inundated. Ponta was to receive Serbian citizenship from the country's president Aleksandar Vučić for executing the order. The Romanian official does not deny making the decision and says that it, quote, saved thousands of lives in Serbia. Ponta is a seasoned Romanian politician, having served as prime minister from the Social Democratic Party from 2012 to 2015. The latest polls ahead of the upcoming May elections saw him taking 15% of the vote. Against the backdrop of war and air sirens, Kharkiv's amputee soccer players are refusing to give up the game. Amputee soccer is a sport where war veterans or individuals with limb loss compete in fast-paced matches. In Ukraine, 4 teams of 12 players each are already active, with 6 more expected to join the league. Among them is Kharkiv's team called Nezlamny, Ukrainian for the unbreakable.
The results already show that those things that didn't work out during the first training are now somehow more coordinated. The ball control is better and everything is getting better. We are from different units, some from the territorial defense, some from the regular army and some from the National Guard. We met here and since we got to know each other, we've already become a real team. We have a real need for amputee soccer in our country, especially in the city of Kharkiv, as we're under constant bombing. There's a large number of people with limb loss among both our soldiers who defended and keep defending us and civilians who suffered from this war.
End of this week on Clear News Bulletin. Thank you for watching. The bottom line coming up next.